Hello, welcome to Framework, the official podcast of pranking your colleagues and loved ones into an early grave. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as always, is John Bernhard.
Hello, it's me. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We're here to talk about Better Call Saul that just finished its first half of a final season. There's just no smooth way of it's a thing that every show does now. Like every prestige show cuts their final season in half and splits them up by 8 weeks or a year or 6 months. But so like season 6A, I guess, is what we're calling it.
Thank God this show is not going to be coming back in a year. By the way, for the final 6 episodes, I can't wait for a year on this. It's so irritating when they do that. It's not even about the cliffhanger. It's just about, come on, it's done.
There's been some pretty big gaps between the seasons proper anyway. You know, they've gone over a year between seasons. This one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, every time I see Bob Odenkirk now, like not as Saul, I'm just like, oh yeah, he's like 60 years old. Like it's really impressive makeup that they have done on this show. But yeah, he got very old since the end of Breaking Bad, and it's because this thing has been going on a very long time. When did Breaking Bad actually end?
I think like 2013.
No, really? My God, like
I'm pretty sure.
Ago? Wow, that's crazy. But it must be, right? Because this is season 6 of Better Call Saul. It didn't happen immediately, and it's been long breaks.
Long breaks. Yeah, final episode date, September 29th, 2013. That has been a minute.
I would have said 2017 at the earliest. Wow, crazy.
And so I'm trying to think, like, all right, everybody's older now in this prequel era. Mm-hmm. But we're supposedly still going to get to see Jesse and Walter White somewhere in the final round of episodes, right, according to that casting scuttlebutt. So, I mean, they have to be playing the same characters while they're 15 years older. Characters that are younger than they in the final episode.
These old men actors, you know, like Jonathan Banks. I mean, mm-hmm. I suppose he probably looks younger when he first shows up in Breaking Bad, but you know, whatever. You know, it's fine. He looks like Jonathan Banks.
Yeah, you do a side by side of Giancarlo Esposito, like you're gonna be able to pick which one is the one from 10 years later, but it's not like striking.
And same with Cranston, I'm sure, but Aaron Paul looks old. Like he's like our age. He is not older, maybe. He was playing young in Breaking Bad. So
exactly, that's the thing. He was playing like 22 or something when he was probably 32, and now we're going back. He's got to be 22 again. I mean, he's a youthful looking guy, but sure. He is into his 40s at this point.
Well in, yeah. Okay, so are we excited to see them again? I guess
not really. I don't care. I mean,
not really. That is the question of this show. I think, is it a show in and of itself, or is it a lead into Breaking Bad? And pretty much, it's been a show in and of itself most of the run.
I do think it's most successful as a show unto itself. It's pretty. I mean, honestly, in seasons past, I've thought that maybe some of the weaker parts were where it felt obligated to do too much prequelizing of Breaking Bad, and that was mainly confined to the Gus and Mike end of things. And like, I don't need the Super Lab. I guess is the Breaking Bad's version of the Death Star, but I don't know if we ultimately needed as much like intrigue about the planning and construction of the Death Star as we ended up getting throughout all of the prequel series and movies and streaming whatevers.
I would agree, absolutely. But I do think they've done a good job of creating drama within that. Like the German architect plot line, for example, was good by itself. Like that didn't need to be tied to Breaking Bad for me to be interested in it and see where that was going. So I think they've done a really good job in that regard.
Certainly done a good job. Let me throw it to you this way, though.
Yeah.
So there's people have raised the take over the years that Better Call Saul is actually better than Breaking Bad. That is not entirely a fringe opinion at this point. Do you have a stance there?
It is not. That is not because Better Call Saul is doing anything wrong. I think Breaking Bad is, a pretty much a superlative achievement in television storytelling. I don't think anyone's done like sort of sustained tension that well, like ever, in this medium, like over, maintaining a narrative that kind of just intensified over 6 seasons. It only kind of amped up, and it started at a pretty high level. So I would have to say Breaking Bad is the superior show. And I think maybe more than anything, the reason for that is I know what happens to almost every character in this.
That's that is the prequel thing that you run into.
They've done a good job with it, but
they certainly have.
I'm not worried about Mike. I'm not worried about anybody. That I know what happens to Gus. I know that Lalo's plot is not going to come to the attention of the cartel. Something's going to happen to prevent that. It's Cypher in the Matrix. I'm not worried. Something's going to stop you, right? So it's that is a prequel.
No, he's not going to take anybody down, any named characters down with him, because there's none left.
Right.
I guess there's Kim, I suppose. That's
well, Kim has become ultimately the entire tension of the show. I mean, you could say Nacho was a little bit, I don't think anyone thought Nacho was going to make it.
There were times when I was like early on, I was like, well, yeah, he doesn't need to be dead for Breaking Bad. It's possible that he could make it out. At the very least, they could mine tension out of that for years, which they did. Up until this half season.
I guess more than that, I was not too. I liked Nacho, but I wasn't worried so much about him.
I feel like he was one of the better parts of the show, but they didn't quite. They used him a little too sparingly. They didn't have a really like tight, strong reason for him to be continually enmeshed with whatever Jimmy or Mike were doing, so he would just sort of fade away for like a half a season at a time. It seemed like,
you feel them struggle to find something for him to do
every year anew.
And that's like a good way of putting it. The character works, and he's a good actor, a very good actor. I'd like to see more of. But I think I was about to say that is a thing with this show, is that they've kind of struggled to find things. But now that I'm going over the cast again, my first thought was Howard Hamlin. And then no, actually, I think they did an incredible job with Howard Hamlin. Like, I don't know that guy needed to be a series regular for this show to work, but they made the most of it. It was a pretty interesting character, certainly by the end.
Another great performance too.
Yeah, big time.
Now, but so just go back. I think I agree with you on the Breaking Bad assessment there. I think that Breaking Bad's a better show. However, I don't think that the take the Better Call Saul is superior is crazy or anything, because I think Better Call Saul is a better made show in some ways. They just have their craft down so pat. But here, I mean, it's the same people essentially.
Right. I mean, it definitely feels of a piece. Just not just the characters and the setting, like the way the way the show is filmed, the long, deliberate sequences of process, all that stuff.
Exactly.
It just feels like the same language as Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and the sort of elliptical foreshadowing, the way that they'll do the weird little impressionistic cold open.
Love that.
Of some image that you don't understand in the moment, but will come to understand the full like tragic dimension of by the end of that hour. And they've got they've got that part down to a science, and they're really good at that, and better at it even than they were during the Breaking Bad years, probably. But sort of what you're getting at, they're applying that to material that is inherently less interesting, less exciting. That not just because it's a prequel where we know that the ultimate, end state of most of the important characters, and also just not the basic arc of the show is not different from Breaking Bad. It's good guy turns into bad guy, but it's not as big of a fall because Jimmy is shadier than Walt was to start with. And we kind of know because the prequel stuff, he's also like not heading, his rise is not going to be as high, his
right.
apotheosis into Saul Goodman here is going to be to like the middle of the Albuquerque legal field at best. He can afford a gold-plated toilet in his house that probably has 2 mortgages on it, but he's not ruling the Southwest, the way that Heisenberg reaches this higher point before his tragic fall. On top of that, the processes they're depicting, they're even better at it than ever, but it's less inherently exciting stuff. It's document preparation
Mm-hmm.
and setting up somewhat petty schemes that just aren't as exciting as manufacturing Schedule One narcotics under the nose of the cartel, or home brewing your own poison pills. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's professional criminals doing professional stuff with an exacting amount of detail and patience, and that is interesting, especially the way they shoot it. But as you say, yeah, I mean, mostly that's going to be Mike or Gus or people who we
Or
know.
Lalo now.
Yeah, or Lalo. And that's all great, but it is also just like, well, the ultimate destination is known, unfortunately, or fortunately. I don't know. I think they have made a virtue of us knowing to some extent.
At times, yeah.
Yeah, not overwhelmingly, but sometimes. And another thing these do, like those cold opens you were talking about, this and Breaking Bad, something I haven't seen spoken of much, but I think is really, really like the Albuquerque crime franchise or whatever this is. I was thinking about this. I can't really think of another story that presents destiny and fate in terms that you understand it. Like that, yes, the way things happened this way, it is based on all these converging things. It was always going to happen this way because somebody left a bottle in the desert, one time in the past or whatever. But they never draw attention to it. They never say it as text. Like they never make a point of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't hear the word destiny said out
Never,
loud
never.
or
Um,
fate exactly.
mhm. And that this show being a prequel also kind of reinforces that idea. Like this is a world where fate and destiny exist. Like I think you can't say they don't. The way that the way incidents play out within this world, but yeah, it's not a thing. There's no there's no hidden spiritual mysticism in this world. It's just yep. Yeah, I know. It's like that. It's that scene in Benjamin Button, except you don't have a voiceover explaining exactly what the point is.
Well, I was thinking in terms of we've been doing our Sopranos episodes, and that
Oh, that's a good. Yeah,
show
yeah,
has that sort of elements of mysticism that edge in around the sides of that more. It's not really what that show is remembered for exactly, but it's much more present there than it is in the Breaking Bad universe.
yeah. You definitely get the sense there's heaven and hell in Sopranos. Yeah.
Yeah, this is something more anyway.
Yes. Right.
But
And certainly morality and yeah.
yeah, you're right. The Breaking Bad uh, has made an asset of that, even going back to the original series, where even though that wasn't a prequel and things were ostensibly up in the air, even by just like the title or just we knew the type of show it was. We knew it was an anti-hero show. That's a thing that had been established. We had, even if you're not really paying attention to like, interviews with the creators who are very explicit about saying it's about taking a guy from Mr. Chips to Scarface, that his progression is going in that one direction only. Like,
Yeah.
he's not going to get better in the fourth season, like that.
Oh, it ruined the show. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't know what's going to happen in the fourth season, but you know that it's going to be a continued downward trajectory, like morally, at least, and he's going to end up beating Gus, but they make much like they're doing with Lalo, make it really hard to see how exactly they're going to do it. It can pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they've done very well with all their limitations on Better Call Saul of creating tension and mining it, and even making you worry about Jimmy McGill's soul, which we know is just nothing and gone by the time we reach the prime timeline. Yeah, like I understand why people would say this is the superior show, and I would think somebody who's not into crime shows or violent shows in the way that Breaking Bad explicitly would probably enjoy this more. Especially somebody with interested in legal television. This seems to be one of the best legal shows going on, and there's a lot of them.
The only legal show I can really think of that breaks out of the sort of like procedural format of there is a case that is going to be resolved in this episode, and this episode is all about that case, and that's blah, blah, blah. Like the way that these practicing attorneys are juggling multiple cases throughout any season, and they're not necessarily all like it's not going to be resolved in the same episode it's introduced in.
Yeah, and
And
it's also like class action stuff that we're getting
sure,
into rather than criminal things, which are, those go on for years. I mean, they talk about it in the show.
yeah, absolutely, they do. But that's not the most easily dramatized stuff. When
Right.
your protagonist is a lawyer, and the victories come in the courtroom, it's hard to you know play that out believably over a case that would believably take a year or more. Better Call Saul handles that pretty well. It helps that they can sort of flip the switch over to Mike with a sniper rifle whenever they need to goose up the energy of an episode.
Yeah, I mean, as a legal show, like if that's your interest, that's what you want, then obviously this is the better show. I mean, this is it's working at a real high level there. It's teaching me things I had no idea about because its focus is so specific. Albuquerque mid-sized businesses and that community. I have no idea how law
Yeah,
fits into that, and now I feel like I'm at least seeing the TV version of it. it's it's a window in the world I don't know. It's good.
but I mean, it's lots of things that medical procedurals and police procedurals. They also struggle with that. Try the idea of, I mean, maybe you get something like The Wire or whatever that does a big, investigation into
Right.
the kingpin that lasts a season. But you don't even see like on medical shows that a patient sticking around from one week to the next. Maybe outside of a couple of 2-part Scrubs episodes. Um, that is probably an area where people come in and out of the hospital a lot faster. But even so, there are chronic illnesses. It's just the format of TV demands, even in the streaming era, that you make things into episodic servings.
Yeah.
And breaking out of that is still to like this late into the golden age of TV or whatever. Like it still feels really unusual and striking.
Especially for a show that is explicitly about those things, like Better Call Saul is a law show. But I don't know. I mean, do you think there was ever any temptation to make this a procedural, to be like, the case of the week, and it's just sort of goofy con artist shenanigans?
Yeah, I think that the initial pitch was
Yeah, it
when
could
I
have been
told it
that.
a lot more of a comedy. That they initially thought it might be a half hour, and that it would focus mainly on him as Saul Goodman. And then it's become, obviously, as they went, they just took it in a direction where now it's become a drama sort of on par with Breaking Bad
Yeah,
in terms of
now it's a
yeah,
Greek tragedy. Yeah.
exactly. So that's actually, but that connects something like you said if you're looking for a legal show, this is a really good one. If you're looking for this for a Breaking Bad prequel, if you're a Breaking Bad super fan
Yeah.
and you're into this because of the connections to that, does it work on that level? And for me, that's actually a really mixed bag. It does. I mean, it's incredibly like faithful to everything established in Breaking Bad. It's not like going to retcon anything really, and it's really diligent about like pulling back in bit players, so that we're going to see Crazy Eight, who lasted 2 episodes on Breaking Bad, but we're going to get that guy back and try and age him down so he can be an employee in Gus's chicken restaurant. Um, and
Spooge the heroin junkie showed up a few weeks ago.
yeah, exactly.
Didn't expect
That
that.
then there's when Wendy, the
Oh, of course.
prostitute at the motel, is around. I think her name is Wendy. I don't know. Maybe they just played
Yeah,
a
it's Wendy.
song that
It
mentioned.
is Wendy.
But anyway, like all the minutia there, like the attention to minutia is incredibly strong, and like the connections there. That if you wondered how a super lab was built, oh boy, have we got 3 seasons of material for you. Um, if you want to see how Mike got involved with Gus, we got plenty of that. Um, but then like when you pull back out a bit in the most general terms, I feel like this show succeeded so much that it overshot the mark where I don't think this actually functions as for me, a believable backstory to the Saul Goodman character that we got in Breaking Bad.
Well, yes, this is interesting. We got 6 episodes left to bring this guy from Jimmy McGill, who is a very well thought out, performed. It's an exceptional character, to the sort of I don't want to say one note, but pretty close to one note version of Saul Goodman we saw in Breaking Bad, who was pretty much amoral. I mean, and not entirely, but not like the Salamancas, but like a bad guy, basically.
But that's not the thing. Is that they progressed him too far already. Like, I don't think there's any way to to fix what I'm talking about
Really?
at this point, because they've done too good of a job with him. They can't undo it now. And the problem is that not that, I don't see him becoming that bad. It's just that the Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad is so much more shallow. Like, he's not right. I don't believe that guy has the life experience that this show has put Jimmy McGill through. That this Jimmy McGill is so much more introspective, so much, that he has all this tragedy in his life that the Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, I just don't. Well, he's already been through the murder of way too many people close to him to be as taken aback by some of the cartel shenanigans in Breaking Bad as I think he is.
I mean, Odenkirk certainly wasn't playing that at the time.
Exactly.
They hired him to be a sleazebag. To come in and be a funny sleazebag, and that's mostly what he did. And
he nailed it.
Yeah, it's why he hired Bob Odenkirk. At that time, you're right. They have kind of progressed him to a point where it's hard to buy that. I want to see what they're going to do with the 6 episodes, because they have not been stepping on the gas to get him to Saul Goodman that we know. Like, at no point during the show have they been like, okay, we got to start, circling the wagons. We got to make this character match up with the character that has been established. That's not been a concern. So, I mean, I'm guessing there's going to be something humongous that happens that just makes him shut down emotionally. Something like that. I
still feel like the events of Breaking Bad as they intensify would have awoken some of that again. I just don't think it's ever going to work for me, and that's fine. Like, I'm really interested in seeing the next 6 episodes too, not 6 seasons, but not because I want to see how they land up with Breaking Bad. I've just written it off as I'm never going to be satisfied with how those pieces connect at the very end. But as its own thing, like this, I'm really happy we got this show, because as its own piece, I think it's interesting on its own terms, and I'm interested in where his character goes on his own terms, even if I don't entirely buy that it's the same guy as in that other thing that I like.
Yeah, but I guess in a sense, I'm worried that they're going to break it trying to push him into that mold. I mean, I probably should.
Well, that's the prequel threat.
Yeah,
It's going to turn into that beach scene from X-Men First Class. We're like, oh, we had such a good movie going here, and now you're like, but not everybody has to be exactly lined up to where they're going to be 40 years later.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could buy it if there is a time jump between the end of Better Call Saul and the beginning of Breaking Bad. That would make sense to me. It was like a couple years later of him doing this thing, of him going through some sort of purgatory where he exists just as Saul Goodman. Jimmy Kim McGill is fully dead at that point. Probably the loss of Kim Wexler in whatever form that's going to take. This is just speculating, but then you hear Walter White and Jesse are going to be in the last 6 episodes.
Okay. That can be, they do flash forwards, flashbacks, right, whatever. That could be any time from any angle. Like I said, no matter how good the last episodes are, I don't think I'm ever going to go back to watch season 2 or 3 of Breaking Bad and buy that Saul Goodman is haunted by the loss of Kim Wexler. He doesn't strike me as haunted in that, and he absolutely should be in this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know. I mean, God, now that it's been 10 years since Breaking Bad is on, maybe it's time to rewatch this after the Better Call Saul ends. I'm a little curious now.
I've been thinking about it myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe a thing.
But I'm kind of putting it off because I don't think it'll do those last episodes any favors for this exact reason.
Yeah, you're probably right. But
so there's okay. Let's talk about this half season that just ended. Yes. So I have put forward this hypothesis in a couple of other contexts that this very common thing now where the final season of any prestige show gets cut in half, or at least chopped up with this break in there. Reliably, the first part of that bifurcated last season is always like the weakest part of the show. I think that applies to Breaking Bad and lots of other shows.
It's almost like the worst the show ever has been sometimes, I mean, like certainly true of The Sopranos.
It's true of The Sopranos. It's true of Breaking Bad, two of the best anti-hero shows in history. And I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say the two best anti-hero shows in history.
Yeah.
I guess maybe some people would throw the Shield in there, I guess.
Yeah,
But anyway,
he's
but it
quipping.
applies to the Shield too.
Mm-hmm.
It had it had a 6th season that was sort of like cut. It wasn't bifurcated this way, but it was cut short by a writer's strike, and that 6th season is the weakest of any of those seasons.
It's all wheel spinning. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
well, Forrest Whitaker is no longer interested in being a regular. Let's figure a way to get him out of here. Let's kind of put all our pieces in place for the final movement.
Exactly, and that final piece setting, once you have the goal in sight, that final table setting is the most frustrating version of table setting, because you're like, oh, I can see the fireworks factory right up there. And so I think this season of half season of Better Call Saul has probably been my least favorite, but not at all for those reasons is the odd thing. That it seems like it's plenty eventful, and it's not straining to set up new conflicts here exactly that weren't set up by the last season.
Right.
But there's a thing here that's been interesting to me, how I'm just really, really not on board with Jimmy and Kim's big con that they're running on Howard Hamlin.
Yeah.
And not like from the start, when I think we're supposed to be off board with them at some point by the end, but I think we're supposed to be on at the beginning and at least be having a good time. And I'm just like, this is psychotic shit. What on earth is going on here? Which is kind of odd, because in a way it's not the most violent thing that I've ever rooted an anti-hero on through doing. It's not the highest stakes, worst, quote unquote, worst thing that I've ever seen one of these anti-hero protagonists do, but it feels so much less motivated to me.
It's petty. It's petty as shit, and like for no good reason.
Yeah. There's an element of desperation usually for these anti-heroes. There's no bit of like self-preservation to any of this. There's not even really a revenge aspect, I guess. I mean, they don't like the guy. I don't even remember exactly what their beefs with Howard are.
If I'm correct, if I remember correctly, Howard has done nothing to anyone basically this entire show. Howard has been a slight irritant occasionally, and that's about it. And he even like goes out of his ways to like apologize and try to fix relationships and stuff. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think they underline this pretty effectively by the end of this run of episodes.
Like, I think they had underlined that by last year, though. Like by last year, he's like offering Jimmy a really generous job offer, and Jimmy's responding by vandalizing his car. It's like, this is some petty shit. And then with Kim, like, I don't even remember what her thing was with him. I guess he took away her office at one point.
Yeah, something like that.
She had probably already like helped Jimmy commit a felony at that point. So they paid for her to go to law school. Like,
right.
This isn't even the worst boss you've had in your career, I'm sure. Like, it's better than half the bosses I've had.
It's a better boss than Chuck. It's a better boss than Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jimmy's whole thing was that against Howard was that Howard let Chuck let himself be the bad guy so that Chuck wouldn't have to be. But Jimmy knows that.
Yeah. No. Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think they know this. I think that they are aware, very aware, that Jimmy and Kim are the assholes in this situation. And
oh, sure.
Yeah, like they know what they're doing, that this is them going too far. That is, I think, clearly what's going on. I mean, we had a couple seasons of Kim warming up to the idea of conning, of pulling schemes and doing things for some sort of nebulous social justice. You know, somebody, the little guy benefits in some way from screwing over Sandpiper's capitalist schemes. You know, like that's that. Or was it Sandpiper? It's the older guy.
Oh, Mesa Verde.
Mesa Verde, yes. Sandpiper is the old folks' home.
But also, no indication that the guy from Mesa Verde is like really a dick, or that Mesa Verde is a super predatory bank or anything. Like,
he's just a rich
relative to any other bank.
He's not even that unpleasant. I mean, and he really loves Kim. He's like just consistently impressed by Kim, and I mean that's intentional. Clearly, like they're not targeting people like like the force of justice here. I mean, they kind of fuck with that a little in their own heads, it seems like, but mostly it's just about like, it's mostly the thrill of screwing people over. It's mostly con artist stuff, Slippin' Jimmy stuff that he's been established as having that streak in him from the beginning, and he's
Certainly
transferred that addiction over to Kim, and it has gotten the better of them in this last run of episodes in a big way.
Yes, I agree with every sentence there when you write it down. And translating it to the screen, I think part of the problem is that Kim especially, but Jimmy too, to a degree, have been presented as like, these characters are too smart to be like fooling themselves in this way. Like even with like Walter White was a very smart guy, but his delusions were like very clear to me in the audience and understandable. And they always had that tinge of desperation on it. Like once, like things went, even just the pilot episode of Breaking Bad, things went so out of control so quickly that he was always just kind of trying to put out the fire that was on his coattails at any given point. And that made even his more extreme actions a little more understandable to me. And with this, there's just so clearly no fire. It is incredibly premeditated. It is entirely malicious and entirely petty, as you said.
Yeah.
And even if you convince yourself that Howard is a bad guy who kind of deserves having this coming to him.
And he'll be okay. He'll be okay. He's Howard, That's what he's talking about at the end.
Yeah, which I kind of didn't.
Howard to deal with.
I kind of didn't buy. I kind of like, okay, you're sort of like speaking for the segments of the audience or whatever. Like that, not that this person would actually be vocalizing this in this instance, but it's more like one. They seem totally blindsided by the idea that stalking this person, planting drugs on them, framing them for abusing prostitutes, and drugging him against his will in order to ruin his reputation would have such a negative effect on a person's life. Like when he gets killed, they're like, "Oh my God, what have we done?" It's like Jimmy already pranked his brother into committing suicide early in this series. Like,
and his response to that, though, like if you recall, his response to that was just to shut down and not take responsibility, which. It doesn't seem necessarily like the character we've been watching, but at the same time, also, I think a lot of people would do that. I think that is a very human response, is to avoid feeling blame and guilt as best you can, and just shut down the idea of it.
Well, exactly. But the way that you would continue to avoid it and shut it down is by not embarking on this entirely like extracurricular other campaign.
No, he's refusing to accept
life.
He's refusing to accept his responsibility in there. Like he's just saying, I know that, that's not my problem. That's not the result of what I did to him. And because he does not accept that, he just continues on that path. And he's also doing this because he wants to keep Kim with him. And he thinks that's the way to do it.
Yeah. As I said, this is more on her, I think, in that I'm having a harder time following her through it. I mean, she is intentionally more opaque to us in the audience, I think, why exactly she's following these compulsions. But it's harder for me to understand, I said, because this is, it may not be as violent, but it strikes me as just entirely fucking deranged to be somebody of her intelligence who's able to articulate, I want this goal for myself, and I want to do this pro bono thing and have that all offered up on a silver platter and say, nah, fuck it. I'm going to go back and do the thing where we frame a guy for, I don't know, bribing. No, they framed Jimmy for bribing the judge, but for drug use. Yeah. For drug abuse. Whatever.
And just incompetent professionally, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, just the lack of any sort of self-preservation motive makes it really hard for me to relate to this, as I do so many other, anti-hero behaving badly shows.
I mean, I understand what you mean. I buy all this though, within the context of these characters who are flawed characters who are fucking up because they're in a Greek tragedy and they're going to pay horribly for it. Like that's
where I describe all those other shows. Like I understand every step of this road, like the justification for what the thing they're telling themselves at every step along their, road to hell. And here's one where I have no idea what these people are telling themselves.
Oh, well, they do thread that thing in. And this was something that they did not really underline much, and I kind of took me a while to remember it, which was that the HHM lawsuit is going to take years to resolve, and these people are, the plaintiffs are in their 70s and 80s. And so they're not interested in that. They're asking, no, could we just do this quickly? I don't care if it's as much money as long as it's quick. And they're like, no, no, no. We see dollar signs. We see a much bigger settlement that can be won here. So we're going to, it could take a year. It could take 2 years. It could take a little longer than that even. But trust us, this is the right thing. And that is sort of the moral ground I think that they're standing on. They're moving this along. For the old
I don't recall.
It is bullshit, but it is.
Well, of course, it's bullshit. I mean, I don't recall any part of like the class members of the lawsuit like agitating for cash us out faster.
Oh, it happened in the last episode.
No, the last episode she was like, "No, we're gonna do whatever you guys think is right."
As they manipulate her. She's like, I just want it done fast. That's what we really want. And she's like, listen, something this size is going to take a year, 2 years minimum. I'm really sorry. I understand. And
maybe maybe that was supposed to be more. Yeah. Maybe that's supposed to be more villainous than I read it as, and maybe this being.
It's not that villainous. It is.
That's the thing. It's maybe being a lawyer by trade. I'm a little more sympathetic to the legal team on this, and thinking that Jimmy and Kim should be more aware, like, of how much bullshit it is to be
they're lying to themselves. Yes.
Yeah. Even if you're saying like, oh, we're going to get them paid faster, and that's better than getting paid more later on for these people, you're still like, by framing their counsel for being a psychotic drug and prostitute abuser, like you're devastating their bargaining position.
Well,
you're getting them
that is exactly what they did. And that's why they took the old settlement quote from the beard lawyer, and they're like, "Yep, it's that, and it goes down $1 million every day." I mean, yeah, they're wrong. That's the point. I think the show is very aware that they are in the wrong in this case, and this is the lie they're telling themselves to justify it, and the lie that Howard is a piece of shit, and that they're looking out for the little guy. It's the same stuff they've kind of been telling themselves the whole series, taken to a more extreme position and length that is at this point now like a lie, that it's just not true anymore, no matter what they say.
I think your point that they're supposed to be wrong, and it's just that I think the art of the anti-hero show is by understanding what they're telling themselves at each step along the way. And this, I completely lost the thread very early in this season, and it made it frustrating in a way that I'm not sure it was designed to be for me.
They did a weird thing where they kept the mechanics of the plan and what this all was leading to kind of opaque. Like, you got the sense they were trying to discredit Howard and make him look like a drug user, but to what end and how that helped them, that remained unclear. Like they made a point of not telling you that, so you see the reveal along, as it was happening. And I mean, you get basically what they were doing. But
yeah, that's the kind of fun like heist movie stuff, right? Though that and like I said, like they're on a craft level, they're really good at constructing these cons and playing them out in interesting ways, and playing with the the level of information that we in the audience have about what's going on and what the goal is, and making sure we understand enough to follow it and be interested,
right?
But still withholding enough for us to be surprised and excited as it progresses. The question of motivation comes up so much less in most heist movies or in anti-hero stuff, because usually the motivation is either it's stay alive, stay ahead of the guy who wants to kill you, stay out of jail, so we're staying ahead of the cops that are trying to put you away, or big bag of money, and
usually all that together,
or some mix thereof. And here, I guess there is a big bag of money in it, but there is no desperation on, like, they aren't hurting for cash, Kim or Jimmy.
And there's that duel scene where he brings us up, where he comes in and does a little crime for him, getting into Howard's car, and he's like, "Hey, so you guys have good jobs. What are you doing here? What are you messing around with?" And Jimmy has a bullshit answer, and even Huel is like, "Okay, I see, gotcha," and he finds it disappointing. I think the show is aware of all this stuff. If it has progressed to the point where you're just like, fuck these people, that is a problem, though.
Well, that's the thing. I think they're aware of it, but I just
Mm-hmm.
don't. It's not. I got off board here in a way that I don't
Okay.
think I was supposed to. I mean, there's points in Breaking Bad where I'm like, well, fuck you, Walt. But also, every time somebody asks him that question and he gives his bullshit answer about why he's doing it,
Everyone knows.
I'm like,
Yeah, right.
I'm like, yeah, but like, I don't buy that. But I see how you tell yourself that a
Uh-huh.
lot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, if you're directly comparing your protagonists,
Yeah.
Walter White versus Jimmy McGill, Walter White is a tough shadow to come out of. It is a difficult character to kind of escape the gravitational pull of, and they've been smart in not involving him at all thus far.
I definitely think so.
You could make the argument that Jimmy McGill is the stronger character, I think, at this point. And I think that's the same thing as saying the show is better than Breaking Bad. I think it's an arguable position, one I wouldn't take myself. But it's I don't know. I buy everything they've put forward with this guy. Buying him turning into Saul Goodman is another matter, but this arc seems to make perfect sense to me. I mean, all the rewards, the success that he finds with his bullshit and his schemes kind of just compels him forward on that path. It is degenerating because he keeps getting away with it, and that extends to Kim too. Now he's kind of infected her with his bullshit, and yeah, I think they just hit a major
Turning point. What?
turning point? Yes. Result.
Oh.
They've hit there's a consequence now, a major one, which is a corpse in their living room. And I don't know, if there were less than 6 episodes, I'd be like, well, they're definitely going to figure out, they'll hide the body and figure something out, and it'll probably involve Howard getting framed for using drugs again and being a fuck up, and yeah, that damns them in a lot of ways if they weren't already damned. But I don't know, with 6 episodes left, I'm kind of waiting for all the other consequences, and all the other chickens to come home to roost. And I think it's going to be brutal. I think it's going to be very bad. And that is the means by which they'll be able to say, well, yeah, he just shuts down after this. And that's how he becomes fully formed Saul Goodman by the time Breaking Bad starts.
Yeah. Again, that's just circles back to the thing of, I'm not sure that I buy becoming the Saul Goodman of Breaking Bad as an authentic reaction to like this level of deep trauma. If like Kim dies or something, like I understand, like when you put it in really abstract terms, like shutting down emotionally or whatever. Or,
well, it's a TV narrative. I mean, they're
giving up on. Yeah,
I hope they do a better job of it than just like the simplified version that I'm kind of imagining. Do you have predictions for that? Like how they're going to handle Kim? Here's my thing.
I do not know. I think they've killed too many people to kill her too at this point.
Same here. I'm thinking she goes to jail. Maybe she confesses. I don't know. But I think that's why they're removed, and that is why he's able to shut down so effectively.
Well, and she could be getting out of jail in the future Cinnabon era if she goes to jail for some lesser offense than capital murder. So that has some, I guess, structural viability there.
Oh yeah, well, Cinnabon. I don't know. Do you think we'll come back to that? I guess we have to do it at least once, but
yeah,
I think it's just going to be another incidental kind of like moment of sort of quiet desperation, and that'll be it. And that is his purgatory and his punishment. That's where he ends up. Because
I don't know.
You think there's something happy coming for him? I don't know.
Yeah, I do. I think that there's if there's a flaw in Breaking Bad, it's that they blinked a little in the very end and took it a little easy on their protagonist, and
a little
got a little too sentimental about their protagonist. And Jimmy is not as bad of a guy as Walt was.
You make a good point.
So I think they're probably hadn't. It's a little easier to sell that bit of redemption, and I think it'll be tempting. I honestly think though that they may regret having even gone to Omaha at this point at all. Like I think initially they kind of thought that it would be a major part of the series, like kind of exploring that going forward. At some point, maybe they would transition fully to that, or it would just be I don't know, Godfather 2, back and forth narrative. But then I think they got so wrapped up in the sort of, quote unquote present day timeline of the show that now they're kind of like, God, we gotta figure out a way to pay that off, like that justifies all these years. And it's only getting harder and like a bigger hill to climb as time goes on. I don't know. I'm not really getting my hopes up that they're going to pay that off in a spectacular, satisfying way. But of course, if they do, I'm sitting pretty. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like Breaking Bad, had ups and downs for sure. It ended like like lightning. The last run of episodes of that was just incredible television. No two ways about it. And it was so good. And I'm so curious to see what they come up with here. The prequel rules make it harder. The nature of the show makes it harder. Um, we know Lalo's going to get killed. He's the bad guy. He's going to get killed. He can't be alive for the events of Breaking Bad. So, and that Gus and Jonathan Banks will make it, and and that seems like one major part of the story that is just sort of de facto resolved already.
Well, it's only exciting because they've created such an incredible villain in Lalo.
Yeah, Lalo's
he came on pretty late in the game, and man, what there probably is a ideal version of Better Call Saul that is a little shorter. Maybe it's 4 seasons, so that maybe we don't go through some of the same motions of like Jimmy doing a revenge, con on his brother that leads to his death, and that shocking him and devastating, and then doing a revenge prank on Howard that leads to his death, and that shocks and devastates him in the same way. And also maybe we introduce Lalo a little earlier on and have him be a more consistent presence, because man, Tony Dalton, incredible addition. Really just live. I mean, that's what's incredible. Even as I'm sort of lost the thread on the Jimmy and Kim side this last half season, I'm all a Twitter about what's going on the cartel side, even though that's the fait accompli there is so heavy.
Yeah, I mean he's a deeply engaging actor. There's no question about it. And it was fun to see him get like an MCU role out of this. That was cute.
That was.
I expect to keep seeing him and stuff probably for a while. He's great. He's really well used in this too. And those scenes of him going to like Germany and just investigating, and we don't even really know what he's doing, are fantastic. That there was so much tension in that thing with the wife. Yeah, my God, that was exceptional television, and you look back on it and it's almost like, well, nothing happened really, but man,
yeah, nothing happened. If it had, it wouldn't have had any impact on the Albuquerque storylines at all. No. But that's what I'm saying, that they're so good at doing that, just executing that stuff, spinning up a character who only appear in one episode, but all of a sudden we're very concerned about whether she makes it or not. That they're really good at that stuff. And the Lalo character is really great because even though you kind of know what has to happen with that character, you never know what he's going to do in any given scene.
Yeah, wonderful.
That's so exciting.
Like that scene in the sewer in the last, the last episode where he figures out that the phone, not his phone, but the person he's talking to's phone is bugged. And we kind of have to figure that out after him. Like, what's he responding? Oh shit. And then he sees the cockroach and gives him a new idea. And we find out an hour later, it was to go find Jimmy McGill.
Yeah, the cockroach reminded him of Jimmy.
Yeah. That's such good stuff. And it's really fun to see like this process oriented stuff. That we usually been like, mostly this was Mike's thing, the slow, just follow him doing a thing, that's been like a big thing for Mike. He has like 3 scenes every season where it's just 10 minutes of him, like slowly taking apart a car and putting a new thing in the car that will listen, or whatever he does.
Right. Exactly.
And to flip that and put it on basically the Terminator character here, the mad killer, and watch him process stuff is pretty awesome. It's pretty scary stuff. It reminds me of Chigurh and No Country for Old Men sometimes. Except he's really charming. It's a very fun character, very interesting. Great.
He is charming, and there's the thing of I guess because it's a prequel and we kind of know the deck stacked against Lalo to begin with, and because Lalo is sort of like this independent operator throughout this season, while Gus has this entire army at his back,
Mm-hmm.
Lalo has sort of become the plucky underdog and kind of like
Kinda, yeah.
he's kind of the anti-hero in the show.
I'm not really rooting for Gus, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's pointless to root for him because I know he has to win no matter what. So I could root for him or not, but it's not that I like Lalo better than Gus, but a Lalo scene is more interesting than a Gus scene at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's got the whole deck stacked against him. That's okay. So Tony Dalton, thumbs up. Way to go!
Sure.
Excellent character.
Really, the whole cast is excellent on this. This is a lights out good cast.
Patrick Swayze, incredible performance. You know, could
he carried
one of those sneakily difficult roles.
Mm-hmm. Like that character could so easily have been, you know, the snob to the plucky, likable slobs, and he's not. He's great.
Well, he needs to present himself as William Zabka initially.
Yeah,
and then reveal himself to be, not that, which is tough. And of course, the other like big one here is Rhea Seehorn. Yeah, still never seen in anything outside of this show, but man, what a incredible performance, and what a incredible job they've done with that character generally. I mean, for all my griping, traditionally in anti-hero shows, there's the phenomenon of the wife character that everybody just despises because they're seen as the wet blanket, blah blah blah, and then they, the Betty Draper and Scarlet White. I mean, obviously we don't have to leave the Albuquerque universe to find like the primo example of that. And the way that Kim has completely like avoided that reaction from fandom. She's
upended it. You might. Yeah.
It seems like most people's favorite character.
Yeah.
And part of that's just that, she's more of a partner in crime than a wet blanket for Jimmy. But I feel like other shows have attempted that. I think, Sons of Anarchy, I think, attempted to get like the girlfriend character to be more of a Lady Macbeth type, co-conspirator with them early on, but I don't think she was ever a favorite of anybody's.
No, I mean, they threw a lot of shit at the wall with every character in that show.
Sure.
Maybe this will work. But yeah, you're right. I hadn't even thought of it, but you're absolutely right. That is an accomplishment that this show has got. And yeah, she is. Now she's a great actress, and she's a great presence on screen. I think Anna Gunn is a great actress. Do you think if you switch Rhea Seehorn into that role, into the Breaking Bad role, she mitigates that at all? Do you think that, or is it just the character as written and the way culture receives that sort of role and the time it came out? There's just no way to avoid it.
I mean, okay, if we're just setting standard at mitigation, sure, to some extent, I think she is a little more likable maybe than Anna Gunn, but generally, no. I think the reception is still mostly the same.
Probably, yeah.
I think she's seen as the wet blanket. Skylar is not written to be especially sympathetic. Certainly, I mean, the one thing I think that the Kim character gets that helps is that she is written to be hyper competent, which is usually the domain of the anti-hero, is that they're the hyper competent one.
That's like the number one thing you need to like a character. It seems like, certainly on a show like this, that they are really good at what they do.
Well, that's Mike. That's the only thing. That's like the only aspect of Mike's character.
Mike. It's interesting. I feel like I was expecting to see Mike lose his soul a lot more on this show, and I mean, I guess it's there, but I don't know. I feel he's kind of sidelined for being a really good presence. His personal narrative seems to have dropped off in the last few seasons.
Well, yeah, okay. In the last two seasons, I think maybe if you did a whole series rewatch, you might be like, oh, well, they kind of did that in the earlier seasons, and there's been less of it now. But to me, I almost think that's a benefit because I also don't want to have the same issue with Mike as I've talking about with Saul of being like, I don't know if I buy this guy's going to go through all of this, emotional Sturm and Drang and do the tortured soul thing here and then be the guy he is in that earlier series. later in the timeline in the earlier series, the prequel stuff.
I mean, he fits together with his Breaking Bad version a lot more than Saul does, I think. It's
his Breaking Bad version's pretty dead. I mean, I guess he's still he shows a little, he's got loyalty to his guys towards the end.
He's got granddaughters, stuff to, play with both shows. He's got, and I guess that there's sort of an attrition thing going on with him, having to kill that German guy, having to be part of the Nacho thing. These are all things that kind of, just eat at the soul, one assumes. And I imagine they're going to play with that a little at the end here in the final 6. I mean, he's not going to do nothing. He's got one big showpiece thing to do left, I imagine. He's Jonathan Banks. Yeah.
But that's I don't need at this point any more connective tissue between where he's at now and where he is at the beginning of Breaking Bad.
No, you're right.
I mean, they don't I'm happy. I'll take those scenes, but for my peace of mind, I don't need anything to connect those dots for me.
All right. Well, that was us talking about the cast. Anything else we want to hit in there? Any other performances? I think those are the big ones. I miss Michael McKean. He was good on the show. This is, Ben typically just really well cast and performed. They nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Giancarlo Esposito's just always good. I mean, it of course, the Gus character is such that it pretty much, it seems like he's always doing nothing.
But I really appreciate that they have not taken the bait of trying to get to know him more than we already did. He's here, he's present, but we're not filling in the details. He's still the same kind of enigmatic figure that he was, which is impressive.
Yeah. We're seeing so much more of him, but they've maintained that good, like you said, enigmatic quality, so that we're still sort of seeing him more through the eyes of Mike or Nacho.
Yeah.
Who can't get a full grasp on the guy. Good stuff.
Yeah. And,
good show. I'm looking forward to the end.
Really good show. Into it. So that's it for Better Call Saul. And we will we'll revisit this when it's over. Very much enjoyed this first season and had a nice talk about it. Thank you very much, Al.